Okay, welcome back, right? To the live stream? Like, for real? Like, I don't know. Like, okay, I'm live again. I'm live again. So, we're here. Hopefully this works again. I mean, I don't know what happened. I'm not sure because the music I'm using, I'm totally out of use for YouTube. I don't think it's that. So, we're just gonna check my audio real fast. And hopefully that was just a hiccup in the action. I mean, I don't know what happened. I'm not sure because the music. Okay, I got sound. Okay, so one more time. Welcome to the first episode of the I Don't Know Show, Dante Maddox. Um, I will probably just take the first 9 minutes and stitch that bad boy together because that sucked, and now I got to keep an eye on it because, yeah, my first episode went off with a hitch. It went off with a hitch. It didn't go off without a hitch. There was some hitching involved. Okay, so right here is the live show. We're gonna share it again because we shared it last time, and man, that wasn't fun at all. All right, let's try this again. Oh my gosh. New phone is tripping. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Attempt number 2. All right. So, I mean, we shared it. And here we are. All right. Hopefully that'll do it. We won't have any other issues. Don't see anything going on here. I don't see anyone put up in here to give me any trouble. No emails or anything weird. Taking forever. Take me to Gmail. Stop doing all that. Okay, I got it. I got it. Okay, anything from YouTube? Okay. All right. Looks like. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. We are back here again, and we got nothing accomplished. First episode off to a rough start, but that's cool. That's cool. We're gonna get this. It's gonna work out for us. We're gonna get this right. And let's see here. That never works. Okay. So the show before was so, I don't know, rudely interrupted by technical difficulties, and we're gonna hope that that's just the last time that happens. Okay, the first things first. This show, is gonna be in like 3 major phases. Top of the hour, the first beginning of the show is gonna be major. Gonna be current events. What happened today? Hopefully, the most topical stuff. We'll kind of go through it, kind of get a chance to decompress, get our thoughts on it, and then we'll go on to more or I'm sorry, less important topics as we go. You know, at least in terms of like the dire stakes. So you can just kind of trail off and call it a night. All right, so top of the top of it, and basically you can see this picture here. Today, Pete Rose died. He was 83 or 84. Let's find out. And let's see here, Pete Rose. He died September 30th at age 83. And let's see here. Did they say what his cause of death was? I don't believe they did. But I didn't want to really get into his cause of death. I grew up in a baseball house. My dad played for the minor league San Francisco Giants. I grew up I'm a huge Dodger fan, living from Los Angeles, California. But my dad, played for our rivals. So he technically hated the Dodgers, and I mean personally did not like Tommy Lasorda because when my dad was a player, Tommy Lasorda was the Dodgers minor league skipper. So he literally did not like Tommy Lasorda. And I was a kid growing up in L.A. Tommy Lasorda was the man. Um, so it was always kind of funny, but we talked about baseball, of course, a lot. And, like a lot of baseball players, my dad had a strong opinion about Pete Rose. And my dad's whole thing about Pete Rose was as long as he's alive, he can't go in the Hall of Fame. Once he dies, he's in like Flynn. And so when I got the news that Pete Rose passed away, my first thought was, okay, so the conversation's going to immediately transition into um, when does he go into the Hall of Fame? Like what are they gonna do? What is the procedure, the show gonna look like? Because it's a given that he'll go in. I was a little surprised to kind of like look around the internet to see what the various opinions were, to find out that sure enough, people felt like even after his death, going into the Hall of Fame wasn't a given. And that really threw me for a loop. And the reason it threw me for a loop is because over the years, it has become less and less of a consensus that Pete Rose should have ever been denied um, access to the Hall of Fame. And the reason he was denied for so long was because he agreed to a lifetime ban from the sport. So, in my mind, a lifetime ban means literally your life. Sadly, his life is ended. That means the ban is lifted, and he immediately goes in on the immediate, like essentially the first ballot. Because while Willie Mays is probably still the best to play, maybe. I mean, I don't know who has come on the last half decade to be in that conversation. But Pete Rose, pound for pound, at the end of the day, as a ball player, will always be in that conversation. So yeah, I was like, I saw, and I don't know what I'm allowed to share on my channel. So I saw Rob Parker and his broadcasting partner. They were on YouTube, but it was like Fox Sports's YouTube simulcast of their regular content, and I don't know that I can just say I'm reacting to it and then just use their content straight up. Even though it's YouTube, and then I don't know. So I figured I would leave it alone. Um, but they were talking about it, and they didn't have a definitive like we know what's going to have next sort of what's going to happen next sort of attitude. But they did seem to both indicate that it wasn't a guarantee that now that he had passed away, he was going into the Hall of Fame. And I was always under the assumption that that was a guarantee, that there wasn't even an argument there, that once Pete Rose died, he'd go into the Hall of Fame, that was the punishment. And because I want to say, okay, let's just ask Google, is Shoeless Joe Jackson in the Hall of Fame? Because I think the answer to that question is it's autofilled that question. Let's see. No. And there it is. And see, I was always, again, could be wrong, under the impression that what Shoeless Joe Jackson and the Chicago White Sox did was demonstrably worse than what Pete Rose did. And there was your line between the two events and the severity of the punishment. What Shoeless Joe and those guys did was so severe that even in death, they can't get into the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose, not so much, but still bad. So for the rest of his natural life, he can't get in. Once he dies, there you go. So, I mean, I don't know how much this will come up in the days to come in terms of current events. And as we'll probably end up discussing in general on this show, I'm not a sports guy like I used to be, but I'm also not like suddenly, I didn't just turn on sports. I think it's better to say I got a little disappointed with the business of sports broadcasting, and I kind of wandered off. I think that'd be a better way to put it, because not everything has to be a critique. I'm a I'm a demographic, and I found something more worthwhile is better than necessarily wagging my finger when I don't necessarily feel like I have that to do, when it comes right down to it. So yeah, that happened today. Pete Rose passed away today. So did Dikembe Mutombo. Um, it's both men's passing was noteworthy on different levels. I think it's not fair to say whether one was more sad or more significant. It was sad that Dikembe Mutombo passed away at 58. Um, he was one of those all around, like, just internationally beloved, awesome guys. You know, like, it's kind of hard to bump into someone who had a bunch of negative things to say about him, even as a player. And like when you watch NBA highlight footage, if you were watching anything about the playoffs, especially about the playoffs, if I will bet folding money right now that if you turn on any sort of NBA, especially like licensed, like the NBA did it themselves, any sort of thing where they are celebrating the playoffs of the last 20 or 30 years, I can guarantee you with absolute certainty there is going to be a picture or a moment of Dikembe Mutombo laid on his back, holding on to the ball with both hands, joy out this world because they just advanced to the next round of the playoffs as a Denver Nugget. It's probably one of the most iconic. It's not a photo. It might be a photo, but like, okay. I mean, heck, I'm this is what I'm doing. This is the show. This is the show. So we're gonna see if I can find it without breaking. Okay, because he has a commercial. Um, Playoffs. Let's see here. Videos. Yep, this is it. All right, so
We've got passion, we've got determination. Like, and if we set our
I'm gonna
sights on something, you better
try to
believe
mute
it's happening.
this.
The 1994 NBA.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause this, and I think this is it. Now I have. There we go. Now check this out. They're gonna show it. I know they're gonna show it.
Block shots. That is a new NBA playoff record for a 5-game series.
And here it is. Here it is. Right there. That's it. I guarantee you, that moment, him holding the ball, clutching the ball. If you go to, hello, I got a viewer, and it's different than my video game live stream. I need the viewer to say hello, to like hang out. So hello, viewer. Thank you for joining the show, and I hope to put you to sleep soon. So yeah, here's the kid Mutombo. Now he passed away today at 58, of brain cancer. I talked to my dad about it earlier. I don't know if he shared that news publicly, but like it was, like a really, really like one of the saddest events of the day. Um, I don't know if overshadowed is the term I would use, because I mean it seems that famous people pass away in groups. But definitely an interesting combination of careers from Dikembe on one hand and Pete Rose on the other. But yeah, that image of Dikembe holding that basketball is probably one of the most iconic playoff moments in a long, long time. All right, so what else we got for current events? Okay, so um, I don't want to make my decompression show political, you know, but I also don't want to pretend like everything in the world is pixie sticks and cap guns. This is the top of the show for current events, so we have to just deal with the current events head on, and then we'll put them out there one last time so that we can see them and we can talk about them. You know what? I think that chat box is gonna have to go up just in case someone says hello. I don't know if I can see the chat, but I can see it now, I think. So just in case, if you want to say hello, then I can test the chat to make sure it's working on screen so you can see. But it's okay if you don't chat. Hello. Hang in there for a second. Let me know what you think. Okay, so I don't want to like suddenly have all these talking points. I just don't. But there's just certain things you got to be honest about. I've been thinking over the last, few 3 weeks or so, like big question: do I, as someone who has a certain political affiliation, owe George Clooney an apology? The short answer is no, only because when he made a public statement saying that maybe it was time for a change at the top, I was like nervous about what would happen next, but I definitely didn't make some kind of public statement on my own social media one way or the other. I just almost shit myself because I didn't know what that would mean, and it didn't seem like anyone else did either. But as it turns out, I mean, it's not all over yet, but it does seem better. And I just don't feel like George Clooney should be walking around trying to apologize for Batman twice and this. Got to cut the guy some slack someplace. Um, I had another section for current events, and then the Pete Rose stuff came up, and it was like, man, oh crap! I want to do a show, so let me talk about that. Pete Rose. And so they kind of shifted gears, and like this is my first show, so I'm trying to figure out like the nuance of it all. Um, there was more about okay, okay, let's not shy away from it. It's only 1:30, no one's tired yet. But okay, so look, I like the folks at MSNBC. I gotta say that I'm technically left leaning, so like what they have to say, I agree with, 9 times out of 10. But I tend to get a little frustrated with like some of the dismay. Like, okay, so you're watching MSNBC, right? And today's a really good example. There was just incredible weather events up and down the eastern seaboard, and in places like South Carolina, it got really bad, and a lot of the various local governments were like, okay, we need disaster relief, we need manpower, we need all kinds of assistance and relief. But what we don't need is a circus. So if you don't mind, because it's an election and you guys are the show right now, we don't need the show in the middle of all this. And of course, that makes sense. And so the election aspect of right now kind of just steered clear, with the exception of one DJT. He showed up and decided to make a moment of it. But, he talks in front of the camera and creates a scenario that isn't exactly, you know, the case, right? And the people who are watching on MSNBC are like, oh my God, why is he lying so bad? And it's like, okay, you guys are smart people. I am trying to figure out for the life of me who you're talking to because it's obvious like why he's lying. He's lying because it works. He's lying because his constituents believe what he's saying implicitly. So your dismay is kind of misplaced. He is not being ineffective. You know what I mean? He's not doing that because it don't work. He's doing that because when you walk over to the people who listen to him and only him and the people that he says listen to and you ask them what like the facts are, they're going to regurgitate all the things he told them. So I don't get how you don't get this yet. I mean, we are like way late in the game for you to be like not understanding how this works. And I find it like a little frustrating when it's like are you pretending to be frustrated or are you really frustrated? Because I feel like it's kind of obvious that the biggest issue is we can no longer break through to each other and communicate directly because we are convinced that the other side is lying no matter what they say. You know, and so it just doesn't make any sense to be so dismayed if you know that that's the situation going in. Um, and see, like that's the thing where it's like I like MSNBC, but if I'm really being honest, in a perfect world, they just no, not even perfect world. If the country was working properly, the last thing we would have is in MSNBC, Fox News, uh, the rest of these Newsmax, like cable news, 24-hour news networks. Like it's not a battle of good versus evil. It's you shouldn't be doing this, and doing it more as a counterbalance doesn't make it better. You know, Ted Turner decided that he was going to prove a point with CNN that you could make money with informational television on a 24-hour cycle. You can package war. That was Ted Turner's whole idea behind CNN. There's a underlying understanding of ethics when it comes to journalism that is completely violated the moment you have some kind of weird fiduciary responsibility to an advertiser. So you're done the moment you do it. And you're especially done if it works. So the moment Ted Turner was right that he could make money through cable news, he kind of fucked us because now we live in a country where political parties have their own news networks where they can spew out propaganda 24/7. And then one of them asks why the other guy is lying. Well, what do you think happens when you can partition the news and both sides can say that they're speaking the truth? You're going to get a political system that operates the way it does. You know, I mean, I like Joy Reid. I really like Rachel Maddow, but they should work for NPR. You know, it just Fox News being terrible does not justify MSNBC because it's still like this weird sort of echo chamber that absolutely can should not exist because how are you talking about the truth when you are presenting only like a certain side of it? And I get that like I'm technically liberal, but I think that the approach 9 times out of 10 is overly divisive. And if it's overly divisive, you're just not helping. And if you're not helping, then what are you doing? You know, and so like I don't ever tell people they should watch more MSNBC. I mean, I'm watching it like and look at my face is like somebody farted, you know. So I can't tell someone else that they should get informed by watching, MSNBC. I just don't. I watch it though. I do. You know, I'm whenever they're reporting on whatever they're reporting on, it is what it is. but their evening programming is a counterbalance to the evening programming of Fox News, and that is deeply inappropriate, and it shouldn't be done. And the polar opposite of that, it shouldn't be done either. You know, and that's kind of where I am on that, and why I felt like this show might slowly but surely over the course of maybe a really long time find a small, you know, group of people who are like-minded, who just want to, who aren't going to just decide it's blue or red, great taste or less filling, that it's more nuanced and complicated than that, and it's time to start communicating in those terms. Those guys over there are not just idiots because they're over there. I think that we see ourselves as good too often instead of just having a difference of opinion. You know, like it's what's good for the goose, all those things. You know, I just, yeah. Oh, and I lost my viewer. See, that's where it was. That's where it is. And they didn't leave a comment. It's okay. It's okay. It's the first episode. We got one viewer. That was one more than we had yesterday. And I think that it's also it for, yeah, for current events. Now we're at 144, so we had a little bit of a technical snafu, and I'm still getting the timing down to know, how long everything is, how long the show should be, and so we'll go from there. But the next thing I want to talk about um, comes from something I did the other day on the threads. On the threads. That is my social media of choice, and I have a small number of followers, like 200 or so, and it's like, okay, like I mentioned in the part of the show that I have to stitch together for the rebroadcast of episode 1, so to find it later, because we had an issue there, or where the stream just kind of ended on its own. But okay, so I wrote for a website back in 2006 or 7 or so for a while there, and I lost my visual aid. Something had happened over there. Oh yeah, okay. And in 2006 or 7 or so, Twitter had just started hitting the scene, and I'm not gonna lie to you, didn't see the point. I didn't see the point because back then it wasn't even 140 characters. It was like 70 characters maybe. And I believe my first tweet ever was, I have no desire to send Snoop Dogg a text message. And I was going to interview Snoop Dogg like 6 months after that. And then the idea was, I don't want to, it's like it felt weirdly like invasive, you know. But Ashton Kutcher and them like got it in and made Twitter like a huge, huge thing up until like recently, where I mean, I don't know. I stopped messing with Twitter for reasons we'll probably end up discussing at some point. Social media, it's one of our topics, so it's for today's episode, because I'm gonna come back and do this tomorrow. I'm gonna try and put one person to sleep again tomorrow, you know. But yeah, like we'll get to it. But long story short, I I have a Facebook I don't use. I have a Threads account that I amuse myself with, like real talk. There are things about Threads that are neat and novel, and it's kind of a developing thing. And there are things that I feel like are inherently problematic that people just don't ever really consider, that I think just should be carry more weight. Like, okay, why are they called followers? Followers suggest the deliberate attempt to build a cult of personality for yourself, and I ain't with that. I just, we see how harmful that sort of thing is all the time, and I just feel like, why are we so into it? How come they can't be friends, associates? I mean, I don't know, like some other kind of cool word. Why are they followers? So like, I follow people, or whatever. Like, I connect, but I really wish it wasn't called that. I think on a psychological level, it just shouldn't be. But I also think like Mark Zuckerberg is awful. Like, just a truly, truly, like, just awful dude. So it doesn't surprise me when he does stuff like followers. But that's neither here nor there. I mention it because when it comes to threads, I am mostly toying in the water and entertaining myself with little or no concern over how many people see what I post. But there is a level of fascination with the process, and also like that idea that, okay, I put forth this effort and it may not have been like maximum effort, but I'd like to see something happen. And you might think you're smart, think you said something brilliant, and like, so you just notice that you'll share something on threads and no one saw it, which for me is par for the course because, one, I'm always talking about not really wanting to engage. And so even if that's not a genuine desire, it will definitely drive down engagement. People are like, oh, really? Okay, well, then fuck you. And that's fine because I feel like even if I say something that me maybe belies a desire, that saying it is somehow, it's coming from someplace. So maybe it's just not good for me. So maybe I'm self-destructing, I guess, but it's probably for the best, you know. But I do get curious sometimes, and I do kind of wonder, how it's all working. And the other day, actually, literally last Thursday on my day off, I just happen to be checking threads, and someone I follow, who I want to say is like a science fiction writer or something like that, someone who is literally in the game of self promotion with social media to get more people, more eyeballs on what they're working on. Something that currently, until tonight, I have not put forth a lot of effort in because my creative pursuits right now are all on the kibosh. You know, we're still trying to get off the schneid as far as the creative stuff goes, but that might be it for me. I don't really know. Um, uh, but they were remarking on their post that they had to essentially like their own post, uh, share their own, comment on their own post, like they had to work on their own post to boost the engagement. I'm like, huh. And I found myself in a position where I had a unique ability to really test a theory because as a Threads user, I have, like, honestly speaking, super low engagement. 9 times out of 10, the only way someone sees something I share is if it's in response to someone else's something. Like, people might see my comments on something, but if I just post something, uh, no, I don't trigger the algorithm to make sure that what I'm posting is in front of anyone. So like and it gives you your stats. You can see like you tweeted this or you threaded this or whatever, and no one saw it. It hit no scrolls. It hit just, we decided that it wasn't worth a shit. And for me personally, I don't know how much I personally care over, based on an artistic philosophy of once it's on the record, it's there, and someone might stumble upon it years from now, and it'll be awesome then. And what do you care if that's how long it takes? So I'm always sort of time capsuling anything that I create, even if it's a Twitter post. Like the idea is, I'm leaving this here, thinking that someone might see this 50 years from now and get a chuckle, like straight up. So I don't really like. I kind of need people to watch the show right now. I do, and I gotta figure out, you know, because the hardest thing about creative stuff is, and when you don't get any feedback, and I tend to not get any feedback, and that usually means that it's really, really, really bad when they don't give you any feedback at all. So, but hey, you gotta just keep plugging away at it. But so this thing, on Threads, I decided to figure out how to deliberately create engagement. And I did it by going into Photoshop and making a meme. And you have been seeing this meme in a little bit of a rotation, because these pictures you see aren't just screensavers, they are the topics. We talked about Pete Rose already. SNL is going to come up later, but there's the meme. Now, the thing about the meme is it was only a part of it. When I posted the meme originally, the only thing along with the meme itself, the picture, the image itself, was "fight me." That's all I said, was "fight me." And every single person who responded, I responded with a kind word. So while it looked as though I was trying to incite like a negative interaction, every single person that responded, I liked their response, and I was like, basically, good point. That's an awesome movie, and so on and so forth. And the idea wasn't to make people angry, but to, like, I don't know, not trick them into a conversation, but respond in a way that increased positivity. And I let it run. Well, it's still there, but I manned it. Like I sat with my phone and responded to every person who left the comment for hours. For hours. I just responded to every single person. Um, if you look at all of my threads, like all of them, the amount of engagement, people taking a look, is beyond minuscule. One or two, you know, maybe the low 50s or 60s as far as people who actually saw it, because they give you page views and then there's interaction. And so I'll have something I put on threads will literally have 100 page views, which means 100 people scrolled it past them without even stopping to look, and that was the most, right? And in that 100 page views, you'll have 0 likes. Like it's brutal. If you care, it's brutal. I don't know if I care. I will go 4 or 5 days without threading something. And that's not like a I don't own a TV sort of thing. It's just like that's just the nature of the wherewithal. But on this very deliberate attempt to drive engagement, to see how many people I could interact with, that thread is currently sitting at 140,008 views. So I went from like 56 views on the thread to over 140,000 views on a silly meme that said Tom Hanks made the best comic book movie ever. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Uh, it was supposed to be more like in your face, but then I added the Jude Law to make it more of a joke. Because the idea is it's a silly statement. And don't get me wrong, that movie is called Road to Perdition. It's an excellent film. And I ended up finding so much cool stuff about that film and many others because once I started engaging with people and not arguing with them and not like insulting them and not and none of that stuff, then people started sharing cool stuff. And I have 1,000 likes, where like the most likes I have on anything else is maybe 7. 342 comments, 18 of those quotes where someone quoted it and then reposted it, and then 18 times someone other than myself just shared the meme with another user. Like, you got to see this. And so I'm not a math guy, but 56 views to 140,000 views is more than 100% increase. It's a lot of increase. So like, I think I'm gonna try it again next Thursday to kind of like to see if I can deliberately do it again, and also doing it in the same positive manner, you know. And I was hoping to share this segment with that grouping of people who checked out the thread. I may do that, I may not, you know. Um, One of the reasons I'm actually trying to like, you know, get people to check out the show and stuff like that is because at the end of October, it's October 1st now, so in 29 days or whatever, I'm gonna be live streaming this video game for and hopefully for charity. I gotta get everything set up. Streamlabs has my back. I'm gonna get it set up for a charity stream, and I got the. I don't want to jinx it, so I don't want to say anything until it's concrete. I know I can stream for charity. I know that Streamlabs will help me do it, but I gotta make sure that the charity I want to stream for is and all that. So yay, yay. I don't know why that came in my head all of a sudden, but yeah. So that's what I did to test the theory of engagement. Those were my results. So I feel like I was able to do a couple of things. And the one thing I was really interested in, and I guess pride is a tough word. I don't know if I'm proud of it, but I really liked that I got that much engagement on a positive tip. I only had to block 2 people out of all those 1,000 likes and all those hundreds of comments. And I mean, I wasn't able to physically interact or respond to every single comment, but I tried to at least like whatever you had to say. And it was so much easier because it despite the statement, this is the best, like these kind of statements can tend to ruffle feathers in a weird, strange way that I feel like I contributed to negatively 10, 11, 13 years ago, talking about comic books on Facebook and MySpace. I'm trying to clean up my own mess here, I feel like on a certain level, being not the best person to have a nerd conversation with 10, 15 years ago. Let's just be real. But the idea was to kind of have a pleasant, fun conversation, and I really did. And out of that was born a couple of different conversations that I thought were worth having. Okay, so one of those was okay, I originally got into YouTube live streaming my drawing sessions. Um, so I'm a comic book artist and writer, and that's my whole deal. But that's not really been going my way lately in the last, I don't know, few years. But we make the best, we do the best we can. And I'm a bit of a comic book aficionado, or I used to be. I don't really read comic books anymore. I just go to the movies now, and it's awesome. But I've always kind of had an affinity for comic books and the comic book medium, and the idea that they can tell any story. That there's no such thing as a story that a comic book can't tell in a way that is unique and is also properly communicates whatever the subject matter is. Comic books are extremely versatile in the amount of storytelling they can accomplish. And I think that superheroes, as much as I love superheroes, sell comic books short. It limits what people assume comic books can do because of the amount of oxygen superheroes take up in that space. And that has a lot to do with how things are sold to people and not truly a recognition of value, you know? And so I feel like it is that stigma around comic books that make it kind of surprising when you find out certain movies were actually based on comics, you know. And so we started going back and forth, and a list emerged. Now the thing about this list is, this isn't your typical like top 10 list of best to worst. And on that list are entries that are really up for debate. Like someone came on and said that Conan the Barbarian was a better comic book movie than Road to Perdition. And again, I don't care. That's not the point. Let's talk about Conan the Barbarian and that whole opinion and like, you know, what made you come to it, because Conan the Barbarian has an interesting history and I don't know if it meets the criteria of a comic book movie. So I mean, so let's see this here. Okay. So Conan the Barbarian, the film was in 82, but Robert E. Howard, who I want to say also did like those Mars, John of Mars. I think it's the same guy. Um, and then of course he'd like Red Sonja and Krull. Okay, so okay. So let's see here. It shows in the like Wikipedia on the most basic stuff that he is first appearance Weird Tales December 1932, right? Okay. Now, Marvel Comics gets some sort of um, nod in there, but I doubt it's going to be from some sort of direct ownership. We're probably looking at something of it passing hands. So, on the publication history, it was published in Weird Tales in 32. In the 30s, 40s, 50s, most comic books came out in anthologies. They didn't have individual issues. There were a few exceptions, but when you look back, Superman appears in Action Comics #1. It just so happens to be #1, but the book wasn't called Superman. It was called Action Comics. And inside Action Comics were a bunch of comic book stories, including Superman. Batman, Detective Comics like 27. He's one of like 4 stories in the book, and he wasn't gonna appear for like another 6 months in a Detective Comics like 32 or something like that. He would eventually take over Detective Comics, but Detective Comics was an anthology story. Spider-Man appeared in Amazing Fantasy, like #8 or 14, or like not the first issue. So even into the 60s, into the new books, you go down the line, and it's hard to find characters who first appear in their own story. Fantastic Four come to mind is early on. But heck, even like those early like Justice Society of America books weren't really what you thought they were. They were anthology books where each member of the team had an individual story that had nothing to do with being on a team. Like, yeah, it was books were marketed and sold with less concern for the future and for the canon and narrative. The the audience concern for the canon and narrative sort of created the writer's concern for the canon and narrative. But before it became apparent that they gave a shit, their continuity was no, no. They had deadlines to get the content out. Continuity was for someone else to figure out 20 years later in some cases. And so, let's see here. Howard was searching for a new character to market to the burgeoning pulp outlets of the 30s and 31. He submitted the short story People of the Dark to Clayton's Publications, new magazine, Strange Tales of Mystery and Terror. Let's see here. In 32, he kept at it. And story Acts of I Rule, 29. So basically, he was shopping around stories all throughout the early 1930s, and it looks like at some point he kind of caught on with one of them, and Conan sort of began to manifest. But yeah, comic book movie based on like whatever the metric is tough because it's I feel like it's a comic book movie. Conan is technically either okay. Is it a comic book or is it like, let's see, the fictional source to heroism in pulp magazines? And it's just been adapted to books and comics. So, if I'm not mistaken, Weird Tales were probably short stories, and Robert E. Howard, because they're not talking about him illustrating the character, they're talking about him writing the character. So, more than likely, early Conan was in short story form. Even though it was in magazines and whatnot, you're probably looking at reading like, just columns of short story from all this stuff. So, yeah, that entry in the threads back and forth was shot down. I shot down nothing, and I just made sure to like reinforce. Another one that got a lot of interest is someone pointed out Akira as the best comic book movie of all time. And I think my issue, okay, it's not that it's not true, but okay, it started off as a manga, and the manga came out in 82. The movie was made in 88, and I feel like right now, do we call Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse a comic book movie? Because if we don't, then Akira doesn't count. If we do, then the argument is really strong. That's the best comic book movie. You know what I mean? Like if it counts into the category, I don't see how it doesn't like kill that category. Akira is a whole different kind of animal in terms of storytelling. You know, and if you say it's a comic book movie, the same as Captain America: Winter Soldier, I think you have a lot of people having a real long conversation about which one of those is a better film at the end of the day. It's a tough one. I don't know. I know that for a long time, the rule in my social circle was you had to watch Akira twice. You got to watch it twice, in order to really understand it. Let's see where. Okay, there were some other ones that really stood out. Like, okay, I haven't seen it yet, but A History of Violence was also on the list of comic book movies that were like non-superhero movies and arguably some of the best movies, ever. And so History of Violence is Cronenberg. And I'm not a Cronenberg aficionado. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not a fan of people because it's not fair. I don't know enough to have a negative opinion. So I checked him out on Star Trek, thought it was cool. Um, but as a director, I'm I don't know. I've seen some Cronenberg stuff, but I think about like horror and stuff with him. But A History of Violence, to my knowledge, while it might be graphic, I don't know that it's. I don't know. But it's based on the 1997 um, graphic novel by John Wagner and Vince Locke, starring Viggo Mortensen, Maria Bello, Ed Harris, and William Hurt. Rest in peace, William Hurt. Uh, a lot of people on the list name this as the best comic book movie they ever saw, with a few caveats about the whole graphic novel thing. Which, it is what it is. I feel like graphic novel is definitely splitting hairs, especially because this idea that the word comic book necessarily equates to a certain specific sophomoric, less sophisticated thing, none of which is true, you know. Um, so yeah, History of Violence went on my personal watch list because it's one of those things where I should have saw that movie. I wasn't gonna write my first movie review for about 3 years, but still, I should have saw that movie. Let's see here. Ghost World popped on that list a bunch of times, and I think that is they're showing a 2001 black comedy. Now, you know what? Huh. Okay, so unless there's another Ghost World, this was in 2001, and I don't know if I thought this was this may not be the one, but the cast is interesting, you know. Let's see here. Cast. Oh, no, okay. Daniel Klaus. Klaus wrote the screen together. Yeah, yeah. Learning curve. Ah, now this is interesting. The person who wrote the comic is quoted as saying, let's see here. Towards this year, writing the screenplay came with a significant learning curve. He recalled, I started by trying to transcribe the comic into final draft. If figured that's how you do adaptations, and I tried throwing everything away and writing a entirely new story that was very different from the book. And I synthesized those two things into a final screenplay. The actual film itself is very different from the script we wrote. We ended up jettisoning the last 20 pages and rethought the whole thing as we were filming. It was really held together by hair and spit. Now, see, like, the cool thing about the magic of filmmaking and storytelling is that when you get across the finish line, most people just don't notice where things didn't go your way. They just didn't notice. And I think his recollection of how they got that done kind of proves that. Because I'm guessing most people who watched the movie wouldn't have assumed that that's how that went. Yeah. But yeah. So I gotta check out Ghost World 2. I haven't had a chance to check this one out either, but it came up a lot. It's just the best comic book movie. Like, okay, now another one that really came up was American Splendor, and I did see that. Now, American Splendor is about Harvey Pekar, and that's a really interesting story because I feel like, technically speaking, even though the American Splendor comic does deal with the events in his life that the story covers, I feel like if you were to pick up the American Splendor comic, that's not the story necessarily, even though it totally is. uh I don't know how to put it. Like the American Splinter movie is a true story about Harvey Picar, but I don't think Harvey Picar wrote and drew American Splendor with the exact same focus of a third omnipotent viewer watching him exist. I think American Splendor, the comic, is literally told from his perspective. That you don't get to be in the room with him. Maybe I don't know. I probably should look up American Splendor as the comic and double check that. I saw the movie twice. It's incredible, and that sort of takeaway isn't a critique at all of the movie and its quality. Deciding what kind of genre it falls into is meaningless. Which is why we're talking about it at 2 a.m. so that you can just shut your brain off and not worry. We're not going to get too deep into superhero movies versus comic book movies. We're just not. It's not that serious. And that's the point. The point is to relax and, call it a night. You know, it's about 2 o'clock. I'm waiting for the images to cycle, a little bit because we're still, in the middle of this. There were a few other movies that were worth mentioning that I hadn't had a chance to actually see yet. One of them is called The Killers with Michael Fassbender, and I want to check that out. That looks good. Let's see here. Okay, on that list, I added Mr. Glass. Okay, so there's another part of that list where there's movies that are technically superhero movies, but they are not um, comic book movies. So it's a story about a superhero. It's a movie, but there's no, to my knowledge, there you go, Meteor Man and Super. Now, Super, I definitely need to look up because that movie was really, really good. I just don't know if it's based on a comic. I honestly don't know. I assume it's not. It felt like it wasn't, but it could have been. And so um, we were. I was thinking it's really interesting. Like, where do you classify a movie about superheroes that isn't based on a comic? I think it still should technically be, if you're deciding that the term comic book movie is indicative of superheroes, then a movie featuring superheroes shouldn't it just be a comic book movie by default? Shouldn't it be what we call that since, that's what we do? That's what it is. I mean, because it's just an arbitrary designation anyway. It doesn't really change the nature of what it is. It's just a way to catalog it, and that's why I thought that might be, you know, a bad opinion you can fall asleep to. That's what that is. Um, and I'm getting a little tired, which is the point. Like, I don't want to fall asleep on camera, but gosh, man. Okay, so we are. That was the social. I mean, I don't know if it was a social experiment, but I wanted to see if I could take a deliberate hand in engagement, and I feel like there's more that needs to be done there, and I will keep you updated. You know, but as we're coming to the end of the night, there's a few things that I thought we might get to if we could get to them. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I am starting to fade. I'm feeling a little punchy. Like this is working on me. I'm putting myself to sleep. Mm. And I don't know. I mean, okay, someone popped on and said I need to go over to Twitch, and they were right. And I was like, I don't really want. I'm not looking for a whole bunch of viewers, but let's be honest, I am now because I want to really raise some serious scratch for this charity next month. I really do. I don't want to do it half-assed. Like if I'm trying to raise money for a charity, I want to raise that shit. So I think that maybe not this week, but a week from today, I probably will add Twitch to the stream so that you know it could increase the because like yeah like I'm not disappointed because I expected this much. Actually, okay, I expected maybe 2 or 3 people to pop in, um, but it is what it is. But also, like, I don't know if I don't know. Well, I'm gonna watch this video and see how it goes and make adjustments as needed. I think I probably need a better mic, but those are investments where you're looking for a return on your investment. And for me, this is still a guy in front of his ham radio, you know. So it we'll get there. We'll improve the quality, and hopefully by next month, I'll have people checking out the live stream, and we'll raise some good money for charity. But before we go, you're seeing the SNL placards, and okay, so this section, I'm gonna be honest, I am a Saturday Night Live fan, super fan. I hate to use that term because super fans usually do more, and I don't. I just make sure to tune in every week, and I've watched every episode, and I just love SNL. Like I love the cast. And so one thing that I've always felt, and I kind of feel it even stronger now as it is becoming closer and closer to Lorne Michaels calling it, you know, is one, SNL is 4 years older than me, you know? So, like, I have seen so many institutions come and go. I have seen and experienced a handful of will never be the same moments, for better, for worse. And I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to be watching TV and there's no SNL. You know what I mean? I consider it the last network show. It's the only thing on TV I'm watching. You know what I mean? Like everything else is internet. Everything else is streaming when I want to watch. There's no water cooler appointment television anymore. I watch when I want to. But Saturday night, 10:30, it's time. Like that's still it. And I don't have any notes. I lived through the '90s of everyone hates SNL, but everyone loves everyone on SNL, which was so bizarre. So like, I my whole thing is because I love the show so much, and I love the what are I guess now cliches or tropes, the things that they do that other people might mock or think are cliche. Like I love that stuff. Like I watch SNL every week, hoping to see Leslie Jones just pop on the show, just be in the audience, just even if all she does is stand up and wait for the crowd to stop cheering and say one thing. Like I've been waiting since she left the show. And my whole thing is the coolest thing SNL could do is like make everybody who's ever been on the cast a lifetime cast member. And I'm not saying you bring them all back, but you just never it's never a thing about leaving the show. You may not be a regular player, but as a lifetime cast member, every year you come out and you shoot the little opening credits thing. You shoot your own little hello to the camera thing or whatever, right? And so throughout the course of that season, maybe you do show up and you do something in the cold open, or you do the very last episode ever of What's Up with That. you're in the opening credits. That's it. Nothing else really changes. You don't do more SNL. Like, but could you imagine like someone like Maya Rudolph when you're watching SNL that night when you were watching on the opening credits in 2026 was like Maya Rudolph, John Goodman, and Eddie Murphy? Could you imagine? Like that just I don't know. Like I think that that's like the last thing that they could do because I'm really hoping that once Lauren Michael decides that he's no longer going to produce the show, that they find someone who can replace him and keep it going. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that that person is Tina Fey. I mean, I have no actual knowledge whatsoever if that's a how likely that is, but I really would hate to like be alive and there's no SNL like that. Like, are you kidding? Um, yeah, cause like recently, Punky Johnson announced she wasn't coming back. There was another cast member who was one of the newer members, and apparently she was on social media, and she was like, "I don't know what happened, but I'm not coming back." And I'm like, "Dang!" Like, and it is what it is, but I just wish it was a different set of circumstances. I wish the stakes weren't so high in a lot of things, and I think we're getting towards the end of the show, and so I don't want to get into any more of the heavier, headier topics because we're trying to decompress, and that's what like the that when I talk about SNL, like it's all like good times. Like so, like I know that it's not all pixie sticks and cap guns behind the scenes, but I hope that it's a little bit better for those casts as the years go by, and that they like okay, last night's episode, the season premiere. I don't get into the critiques. It's a sketch comedy show. It's live. Getting it done is pretty incredible. And it's funny as hell to me. But last night's episode, I did notice they did something really really great they sort of made sure that the entire cast was spread out from beginning to end, and so I think it made for stronger sketches throughout because I don't know, like you shouldn't like sometimes they're like front loaded or you'll have someone who shows up but doesn't do any sketches and stuff like that. I felt like everybody kind of got a rep in, um, and it worked out. Like I felt like the show kept a certain energy level that it doesn't always keep after Weekend Update. Um, but yeah, like I don't really know if it's my favorite show. It's just beyond that. It's like it's a whole different thing. But but yeah. Um, I mentioned earlier about the charity, and okay, and what that's about is because okay, so I at some point in the last 10 years just lowered the priority on the video games, and then also like the technological abilities of my system at the time just didn't keep up with the updates and stuff, and I just like one day realized I didn't have a game system. Like, oh crap, I don't even have an Xbox no more. I just and it happens. Like I was because I'm a creative, a former creative. I play with toys and stuff a lot longer than most other kids. A lot so much longer that I'm assuming back then adults would have been like, "That's weird," Um, and it's kind of an interesting thing because not interesting, I guess, but for someone who did that to have no clear recollection of when that stopped being a thing or where that stuff is like strange to me because you would assume that for someone who was all into that growing up, that I'd have like this massive toy collection and so on and so forth. But man, no, I don't care. Like I just one day put them shits down and got a job and never looked back. And it wasn't like a moment. I just I was gonna be late to work, and those priorities shifted, and so I found myself about 2 or 3 years ago finding out that BioWare was finally gonna bring out a new Dragon Age game, and it was like, oh yeah, I'm really into playing video games. Oh shit, and so I remembered I got a computer for work, and that computer was like, it was for work, so it wasn't like the bottom of the line, but it wasn't the top of the line either. So I'm messing with the computer, and I'm like, you know what? I think I can play DC Universe Online. I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna get back into that. So I started playing DC Universe Online, and I couldn't remember why I stopped playing. It was so much fun, and so on and so forth. And then, like, I think I was like getting back into it, and I happened to like see the symbol for like Dragon Age Inquisition, and it was like suddenly I remembered that DC Universe Online is like it's a nice game, but it's a little bit older. So your requirements for playing it aren't all that don't need to be all that high. But suddenly I had realized that the computer I was using had more power, and I turned like a game on, and that was a wrap. Like I'm like, oh crap, I'm playing video games again, and the the Dragon Age Dread Wolf stuff started popping up. The Dread Wolf, we're coming. The game is coming. It's gonna be here. And I'm like, oh crap. So I'm buying. I got an Xbox. I'm ready to go, ready to play. And so in the preparation and getting back into gaming and to get ready to fire up the system and play Dragon Age one more time. And I mean, really and truly, I played Andromeda 2016, 2017 around, and I loved it. And so I still play that here and there. So I'm looking forward to the next Mass Effect game too. But Dragon Age is like my jam. And so I got like I decided that if I was gonna go back and play this after I used to live stream dragon fights in Dragon Age and stuff like that, Dragon's Dogma, and just that kind of thing. So like I feel like if I'm gonna come back to this, I want to witness. So I want to have a whole live stream of just everything, and I want to be able to just like record this moment because I came back to gaming for this, and so I made some YouTube videos and stuff, and I'm here like trying to like get my YouTube on because the investment. It's like, man, no, I'm doing this, and I was looking through the Streamlabs stuff, and they have Streamlabs charities. I'm like, you know what? Let's if we're gonna do it, let's really do it. And so it's a great game. I waited a long time. I do miss some of the content creator stuff. I do, and so I think I'm trying to find my little edge of the cartoon universe. And going back to what's on one of those placards. I started watching certain YouTubers that I really like the way they do their thing. And I don't want to do what they do. You know, I want to do my thing, but kind of learn how to communicate and edit and all the other things that come along with this, but still do what I'm doing. And hopefully, if I'm lucky, people who are in that same headspace will wander in. But um one of those guys who I recently started watching their content, and I'm gonna start linking to those guys. I really am. I don't want to just like talk about it and not give them their due credit. But he was saying that, in a nutshell, hate, negativity, like is the dark side of the force. Quick results. That if I was here trying to get people to watch, that the fastest way to do that would be to pretend that I was some sort of angry, whatever. That would be the way to just to find out what would anger people the most and just start spewing it. And he wasn't lying. That algorithm is a son of a bitch. Because if you watch certain things, you start getting content you didn't ask for. Because if you start watching content that critiques those negative users, it's like the algorithm doesn't really, the AI ain't AI, and all of a sudden you start getting direct content from the horses, So suddenly in my feed, I'm like, why are you showing me shit about Charlie Kirk? Like, what the do you? Whose account is this? And so you have to be careful with that. And so knowing full well that trying to start a web show that centers around non-confrontational subject matter, middle of the road political positions, like that is not where you're going to find the audience. Like that's not the burning flame that draws all the moths. I'm looking to get people who have come out of the Denny's and aren't ready to go to sleep yet, but are tired, you know, figuratively or literally. It's like so I don't expect to have a bunch of people like here like immediately. And honestly speaking, this is the show I want to do, and I think I would watch it. I just don't know quite yet how to get those folks to come over and check it out. You know, just I think at this point I'm having fun, and as long as I kind of remember that there's a ultimate goal, and I'm taking the steps to actually like improve things. I'm not just like, this is my chance to talk, and I don't care who. No, that can't be it. It's got to figure out something. Um. So yeah, I'm looking at my notes for like the end of the episode. I didn't want to go much longer past the 3 o'clock time. Um, and I felt like I didn't like set the world on fire, but I had fun tonight, I guess. Um, the last thing I have on my list of topics, potential topics, is we're returning to Thetis. Big deal. Um, I have everything I need almost, except for right now the game is pre-ordered for my console, and I've been streaming off my PC, and I don't know how to technically get everything connected properly to stream from my console straight up. Well, but I have time to figure it out. You know, this nightly thing is to help me get comfortable with all of the process, because we're working on a podcast with me and a couple of buddies of mine that I hadn't seen in a long time. So kind of like catching up with the high school friends podcast. My last thing is what's up with live service games? And that's probably a broad question that I'll probably leave open ended. One thing that happened when I came back to playing games was I was introduced to a game called Helldivers. and I had been cracked out on Helldivers 2 for a minute. Like I try and get in at least a mission or two a day. Like just in general, I'm out there. Um, for those who don't know, it is a third person action adventure alien shooter where you play as a very expendable cannon fodder esque sort of space marine versus either the bugs from Starship Troopers or the Terminators. And I am a bot fighter. I fight Terminators like all day and all night. That's all I care. I just want to get out there and shoot some Terminators because they scared this shit out of me when I was a kid, and this is my get back. The game is hilarious. It's fun, and it is easy on the wallet and time consuming. It's like got a lot of upside. The thing is, as a genre, or okay, as a game in the genre of live service, it's not an outlier, but instead, I think it's better to describe it as a standout. Um, Live service games or always on games, for those who are uninitiated, are games that require you typically to be connected to the internet and have some sort of persistent functionality. Like the game is kind of always going, whether you're participating or not. That last part is kind of nuanced because there are live service games that, well, part of the issue is they don't really deliver on that concept of the persistence, because there is a distinction between live service games and MMO RPG games, like massive multiplayer online games. And I don't always readily know where one starts and the other one begins, you know. But what I love most about Helldivers is how they deliver on the live service aspect. And the one thing they do that is just quite frankly brilliant is there's a human being back there. And it gives you your own, basically a dungeon master. And that human being can make adjustments on the fly to constantly update uh, what we're doing in the ongoing effort to defeat the enemies of the game. So there is an entire intergalactic conflict of various planets in various states of being defended or attacking those planets. And so the game master will continually keep updating the war effort. And so even though there's a limited number of mission types, you're kind of constantly bouncing around the universe, fighting on different fronts, and it keeps the game fresh and moving in a way that I'm I'm not the best one to ask as far as knowledge, but as far as I know, there's not many games that can do that particular trick. Um, there's a bunch of different ways to represent that sort of freshness, but in the live service space, they're kind of sitting not exactly by themselves, but I would say they're front runners. And a good example of that is just recently, and it's so funny because all this stuff's on this weird 10-year anniversary. So I get back into gaming because we're finally going back to Thetis. But in that same year, 10 years ago, there were a few games that came out that are just now seeing sequels again, much in the same way. And one of those games is called Space Marine, Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. And it had been almost 10 years, maybe more, since the first game came out, so much so that most people had kind of forgotten all about that first game, which was a shame. It's a really good game. Now, that game technically, I don't know if it calls itself a live service game, but it has some online functionality. So, if you were monitoring the situation and you were, say, trying to figure out as maybe an investor or some other interested party, like if there's a competition there between the makers of Warhammer 40K and the makers of Helldivers 2, which business, which one is going to win out over the other? It's in terms of the live service space. And this is super hypothetical because I honestly don't know if Space Marine counts as a live service game. I do know that there is a great deal of comparison between the two games because of what they are as third person shooters. Now, Space Marine offers a campaign mode that, technically speaking, um, Helldivers does not offer, even though they totally do. The entire game is a campaign mode. The campaign is a war, and the goal is to win it. Unlike games with a narrative, the narrative is more in player headcanon because of, again, the live service aspect of the game. So, by comparison, Space Marines has like a campaign mode, which is a dedicated story with chapters, beginning, middle, and end. You can play that, go through the progression, and see a conclusion. Game is over. The credits roll. We've all done that. That is par for the course. And then there is a multiplayer game and character progression, character creating, and like these. I think there are three-man squad mission things. Like there's more to it. There's more. Oh my! Make all that noise. There's more replay value. However, um, there is a barrier. There is a point with Space Marines 2 where you can do it all, you can see it all, and even if they make DLC, downloadable content, or whatnot, there will eventually come to a point where you're done. You've played it, and now what you're playing for is the fun of playing with other people. But in terms of progression and new stuff, you're kind of waiting for Space Marines 3. That can happen in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, certain games continue to be updated, et cetera, and that's part of like the whole live service thing. So on the other half, Helldivers doesn't have all those modes, but it has a continual, perpetual campaign that never comes to a conclusion. Now, a couple things that I think are really, really interesting about that deliberate decision. Okay, so Helldivers 1, I want to double check this, but I think is in keeping with that decades long delay. Helldivers 1 came out. Show me. 2015. Okay, so not quite 10 years. Oh, close. You know, so there's a similarity there between Helldivers and Space Marines I didn't even thought about before. But there's almost a 10-year gap between the first and second game. In the first game, it, to my knowledge, was not live service. This was a game that, while it had co-op, so you could play together, you were jumping into one player's story. It was their story, their campaign, and they were going to um, see how that went. I think now it all could also could have been a seasonal thing. Like I've never played the game firsthand because it was a PlayStation exclusive in 2015, which means like I nowhere near that. Um, but I check out Reddit, and I think anecdotally, I came across someone who was mentioning that it would be like a server-wide reset, which is um, another aspect of live service you see, especially in competitive games, like Conan Exiles will have a period of time, and then the server will reset, and all the players will start from zero. I don't know how exactly Helldivers 1 was set up, but I do know that it was possible to fail the game. It was possible to lose. And you'll get a message saying you lost. And you didn't lose because you died on a mission. You lost because the intergalactic war somehow didn't go your way. And so I I'm pretty sure, and I can totally like double check this and it'll come up again maybe, but I'm pretty sure that um we weren't all playing the same massive campaign together as in Helldivers 2. Because there's all kinds of theories and stuff about what happened during the first intergalactic war, which was the first game. You know, um, in within the story of the game itself, 100 years have passed between the events of the first game and the second game, and there are people who theorize that the heroes, the Helldivers, actually lost, and I don't know for sure, but part of me has to believe that that theory came from XCOM because that game does something really, really interesting with its core story. XCOM 2 picks up based on the premise that the player lost the first game, which I thought was really, really interesting. So when you play the XCOM 1 video game, there's like this battle that you play the game, you win the battle, and you keep going. And you find out that in the game's canon, that's like an unwinnable situation, and you lost that fight. And the rest of the game, you were actually in some sort of matrix thing helping the aliens defeat humanity. It's a huge thing that I thought was up there with Mass Effect 2's setting up the sequel. Mm. But I'm digressing because I'm getting tired, which is exactly the point of this. So yeah, uh, their approach to live service seems to be unique amongst live service games that are not faring nearly as well. I'm gonna do that one more time. Okay, so recently Helldivers had an issue where some of the game's performance was starting to really ruffle some player feathers, and they were seeing, and like there are websites and YouTubers who are dedicated to keeping track of what's going on with Helldivers, and I am an avid watcher. The game is fun. It's fun. I treat yourself. Play Helldivers 2. It's inexpensive, hella fun. Um, but there was a time when this metric called concurrent players, the number of players who are actively playing, got low. You know, and then recently there was an update to the game's weapons and whatnot. I don't want to get overly technical. I want you to fall asleep. I want eventually people to like and subscribe and then type zzz in the comments to let me know that they're about to fucking like they can't hang out no more. They tried, but they're just I'm knocking them out. I'll put them to sleep. Like so oh, see, okay, I'm ready to call it, but it's almost time. But so, okay, so with the whole live service thing, uh, a few other games came out recently. Most noteworthy was a Suicide Squad game that, for one reason or the other, just didn't take hold. And I honestly think that we're not gonna see them figure it out until another company hires a human game master to keep the live service aspect of their game fresh. because at this point, what we have in terms of working live service are MMOs or games where everything is determined by the player base. And then we have games like Helldivers, which, man, I don't think there's any other game like it in terms of a game master. Most video games simulate a game master with the game's engine, and that engine determines the game's difficulty and all that stuff. You're playing against the computer, but like video games are facsimiles of tabletop role playing games, which require a human to play as quote unquote the computer, and so that's kind of what you did. You realized that you could not create an artificial intelligence complex enough to actually make video games challenging in a way that works, but having a real person play wizard behind the curtain is genius. You know, like Joel can adjust. That's the name of the guy who runs the game. He can adjust. And when you watch Reddit and stuff, a lot of people get upset. They don't get it. Like, oh, that's not fair. I'm like, dude, you are playing this video game 15, 20, 30 years after the MMO craze, where they overpromised and never delivered on an experience of a persistent existence in this virtual world, you know, and the best they could do was everyone take a number and we'll all take our turns destroying the evil lich. And that is somehow supposed to be our persistent gaming experience that is in this whole other world. We're all going to take turns being the hero, the star of the story. That's not what MMOs promised, but somehow Helldivers figured out how to deliver on some of that in the sense of permanence and existence. Like when a major order comes up, the game is like, look, this thing needs to be achieved to maintain victory and to get these rewards. If you fail, this happens. No other game can really give you that. They can't give you those conditions. There's no flow chart on most MMOs to what happens if Sephiroth isn't destroyed, But so far in Helldivers 2, if a major order is failed, we don't have to reset to a save point and try again. That's persistence. That is actual existence and consequence in storytelling. You can't think of another game that does that. Famous culprits of that are games like Mass Effect, where the world around you doesn't ever seem to change despite all that you're doing. You know what I mean? And so Helldivers respects that concept, being well aware that they can't make a game that really does it. So the live service model can be repetitive and still far more fresh and new every time you play than almost any other game, because it's war, So it's, oh man, I have some caps, some streams and stuff, some videos for Helldivers. It's a big community of highly skilled players, and I'm not a highly skilled player at all. But it's a fun system. It's a fun game to play, and it's fun to think about as a consumer, because I think that the company that makes the game does a lot of things right, and they're one of the few companies I can honestly say strike me as pro-consumer, which is so disappointing that I can only say that about one company, that they're actually pro-consumer. Okay, speaking of consumers, I don't have any sponsors, you know, but I do have to sponsor some sleep. I gotta call it a night. The first show, it didn't go terribly. Um, I didn't feel like I didn't know what to say and I didn't know what to do. Transitions can always be smoother. Prepping can always be a little bit better. I definitely want to find more images for my little background scroll, and I want to look into some of the rules and stuff because I don't want to deal with copyright strikes, and I also don't want to put someone else's content on my live stream on accident, and it's one of those situations where they can use the copyright strike to take my content because I am like I can't fight back. I would be just I would be asked out like I'm out here vulnerable in that regard. But I don't know. I enjoy the ham radio of it all. I really really do. And so even if tomorrow night whoever this trooper is who's watching with me, I appreciate you. Even if you're not saying anything, I appreciate it either or. Um, Maybe you'll check it out tomorrow night too. Who knows? But I appreciate you checking it out. And yeah, I think we're gonna call this a night, and we're gonna end the stream and come up with a cool sign off next time. But for now, here is a small amount of music, and I'm gonna like hit a couple buttons, and we're gonna try this again at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Get some sleep, and best luck out there.